Welcome to the Premier League Prediction Show for Game Week 16. In this episode, we're diving into predictions for every Premier League game, complete with correct score predictions. Plus, we'll reveal our 13-1 accumulator at the end of the show. Last week's accumulator won at 9-1, so stick around, you don't want to miss it. Don't forget, we've got 5 televised Premier League games this week. We'll be covering those in the Bet Builder show coming your way on Friday afternoon. We'll also be sharing our top-rated bets from our accumulator tool to help you bet smarter this weekend. Before we kick off, I need a few things from you. If you find these predictions and tips helpful, smash that like button. It takes just 2 seconds, costs nothing, and helps us keep creating free content for you. Drop a comment with your Premier League predictions. I want to hear if you agree or disagree with our score predictions. And finally, don't forget to hit subscribe if you want more free football predictions. We're on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers by Boxing Day, and with your help, we can get there. Alright, let's get started. Here are my predictions for this weekend's Premier League matchups. The first game we're going to cover is Arsenal hosting Everton at 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. Arsenal have won just 3 of their last 8 Premier League matches, but 5 of those 8 have come away from home. If we isolate their home form, you can see they've won 5 of their 7 home games. And this is a great spot for them to go second and put the pressure on Chelsea, who play on Sunday. The Toffees have been off for nearly 2 weeks following their postponement of the Merseyside derby. And they do come in off their most impressive result of the season so far, a 4-0 victory at home to Wolves. This, however, is a much more difficult spot, and it's one where they tend to struggle. If you look at their results away from home, they got thumped 4-0 by Manchester United, 4-0 by Spurs, and they even lost 1-0 away at Southampton. They also lost away from home against every side in the top 6 last season and failed to score in 4 of those. On the injury front, Arsenal still look to have problems at the back. Gabriel, Calafiori both look like their doubts, whereas Zinchenko, Ben White and Tomiyasu are all out. Although that didn't really stop them from putting in a really good performance in the Champions League on Wednesday night. You can see here they held Monaco to 7 shots and a 3-0 win. Michael Keane is a doubt for the visitors and has missed the past 2 games with a knee injury, but he should have had time to cover now after 2 weeks off, so we'll have to check the press conferences on Friday to see if he's back in the squad. Moving over to my prediction and the Bet Scout recommended bets. Before we get into the predictions, just a quick word on how the Bet Scout works. It analyses how each team performed in certain stat categories and produces a recommended bet, along with a unique Scout score, which is a representation of how well teams performed in your chosen markets. You get full control over the markets. You can see here which ones you want to choose. You also get full control over the form, how many games to use, home and away, or all games and all competition or same competition. For this example, we're going to be using Premier League only last 5 games. It's a really powerful tool that can sift through a lot of match data quickly and makes finding stat-based bets really quick and simple. I'll leave a link in the description to check it out for yourself. So moving down to the Arsenal versus Everton bets. So moving on to my prediction, I think this here both teams should be another comfortable win for Arsenal, given their strong home form when Everton struggles away from Goodison Park. Arsenal 40%, Everton should be able to keep it relatively respectively though with the fresh legs after 2 weeks off. So I'm going for a 2-0 win. If you dig a little deeper, you can see that the main reason for Everton having both teams score no in the last 5 games is they failed to score in the 4 games leading up to their 4-0 victory over Wolves. And Arsenal have also had in 3 out of the 5 games, keeping 2 clean sheets at the Emirates. It also shows 4+ cards as the same recommended Scout score of 70%. You can see here again 100% for Arsenal, though, so they've had 4+ cards in each of the last 5 games. And you can see here the main reason for that is their opposition have been drawing a lot of cards. So Fulham had 4, West Ham had 4, Chelsea had 4, Manchester United had 3, so there's 3+ cards for their opposition in 4 out of the last 5 games. You can see the total card counts here, each team underneath the names, and then the margin of up or down based on what the market is. You can see here over, it's 2.5 cards over, 1.5 cards over. Next up, we have Newcastle hosting Leicester, also at 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. Newcastle have been a model of inconsistency in recent weeks. They played well at home in a 3-3 draw against Liverpool, a game I actually went to, and I don't support either team, before anyone jumps in the comments. It was a fantastic game. Newcastle played really well, but Liverpool were equally impressive. They then followed that up with a 4-2 away defeat to Brentford. And they've just been all over the place in recent weeks. They beat Arsenal 1-0, which is a great result. Forest away 3-1, really good result. But then they were absolutely appalling at home to West Ham in that 2-0 defeat. If we look at their home form, though, they're generally very strong at home and the crowd get really behind them. It's the first time I've ever been to St James's Park and the crowd are really up for that game against Liverpool. They played a really tough set of fixtures with 5 out of 7 being against top sides. And if you move over to Leicester, they've been rejuvenated really under Ruvan Nistelrooy. 3-1 win over West Ham and a great 2-2 comeback draw against Brighton. They were very lucky in that West Ham game, though. The Hammers really dominated the game. 31 shots they had and created over 3.1 expected goals and somehow ended up losing that game 3-1. If you look at Leicester's away form, they've conceded 2 or more in 6 out of the 7, and their games have averaged 4.0 goals per game. The Foxes have had no problems scoring this season. They've scored in all but one game, which is away at Manchester United, but they just had problems keeping the ball out of their own net, really. If you look at Newcastle, they kept just 3 cleans all season, so I think this could be another high-scoring game where both teams can get on the score sheet. On the injury front, Callum Wilson looks like he's suffered another fresh hamstring injury. That will keep him out for another 2 months. And a minor hamstring injury also kept Joe Willock out of last weekend's game, so there might be a chance that he's back. For Leicester, Buonanotte is back after being unavailable to face his parent club last weekend, Brighton. But they look like they've got some injury problems in the central midfield areas. Ndidi went off last weekend against Brighton with a hamstring injury, and Samari is also suspended. Moving over to the BetScout top recommended bets, and they are also pointing to another high-scoring game where both teams get on the score sheet with 8+ shots on target. So that's kind of aligning with where we think the game's going to go. My prediction for this one is going to be a high-scoring Newcastle win. Having midfield issues against a trio of Joel Linton, Bruno Guimaraes and Tonali isn't what you want. And also I'd point to Leicester's away form. They have lost 4 out of 4 against sides that sit outside of the bottom 6. And they've conceded 4, 3 and 2 goals in those games. So I'm going to go for a 3-1 Newcastle win. Next up, we head to Anfield as Liverpool host Fulham at 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. Liverpool continue their fantastic form this season with a 1-0 win away in Girona on Tuesday evening. It's now 7 wins out of 8 for the Reds, and that includes victories at home to Man City 2-0, 2-0 at home to Real Madrid, and also a big 4-0 win over Leverkusen in the Champions League. They will benefit from having the Merseyside derby called off last weekend, so they will have fresher legs than normal after a midweek Champions League game. For Fulham, they come into this game in pretty good form. Draw against Arsenal, a draw against Spurs, and aside from the 4-1 hammering against Wolves, which really is a freak result, I think if you look at the underlying metrics on that game, they were a bit unlucky. The expected goals are around evens. They had a 3-1 win over Brighton and then a 2-0 win away at Palace, which is a really good result, and a 2-1 win over Brentford. Looking forward to this game, I think for me it comes down to Fulham's away form. And as you'd expect from most sides, really, it's a difficult spot to go away against a big side. Last season, they lost 6 out of 7 away games against sides inside the top 7. They did score away at all 4 sides in the top 4, though, with 1 at City and Villa, 2 at Arsenal, and 4-3 against Liverpool. They've continued that this season. You can see with a 3-2 away defeat to City and a 1-1 draw away at Spurs. On the injury front, Alisson returned to action for Liverpool on Tuesday night and made 5 saves, showing his class and his quality. And what he hasn't really been a massive miss, but the Reds will be really welcome to have him back. At the back, they've also got some injuries. Konate, Tsimikas and Bradley are all out. But it's really on the Fulham side of things that the injury front looks a bit more bleak. Reece Nelson was announced out for 10 weeks and he's been really exciting to watch. I've been quite impressed with him recently. He's looked lively, great burst of pace, And it's a bit of a shame, really, because I feel like he was just getting back into form, starting to prove his worth in the Premier League, and has been hit with this big injury. So the best wishes to him. But they'll also be missing Tom Cairney and Calvin Bassey, who are out, and Anderson is also out. So there's some defensive injuries and injuries at centre-back, which isn't good. Moving on to the BetScout top recommending bets, and you can see it likes both teams to score here. You can see it's landing in 4 out of 5 games for Fulham and 3 out of 5 for Liverpool, and it's also expecting goal corners based on recent form, which sort of indicates an attacking open game, which is what I think. So my prediction for Liverpool is a win in a game where both teams find the back of the net. Nelson's injury gives Traore the opportunity to make a big impact here, and it depends what version of Traore shows up. He's a very mercurial player. On his day, he's unplayable, and he could turn Robertson inside out, or he could go completely missing. I don't think Fulham are solid enough, though, at the back or in midfield to keep Liverpool out. If they were a bit healthier in midfield, Pereira looks like he's going to have to play further forward again because they're missing Harrison Reed as well. I think Liverpool just have too much for them, and they won't be able to keep out the Reds. So I'm going for a 3-1 victory. Next up, we have Wolves hosting Ipswich at Molineux Saturday at 3 p.m. I thought Wolves had turned a corner with a 2-2 draw against Palace and Brighton. They followed that up with 2 victories against Southampton and a 4-1 win away at Fulham. Then back-to-back defeats, conceding 4+ goals, just followed up by a 2-1 loss away at West Ham, which I think a lot of people thought would be Gary O'Neill's last game in charge. But will this one be his last game in charge if they fail to win or suffer defeat here? The board are pretty quick to come out and say they're going to back him ahead of this match. Ipswich, again, have been a bit of a puzzling side, really. They've shown some really good performances against Spurs and United. That 2-1 away win and a home 1-1 draw. Some really good results was followed up by 3 defeats in a row. One where they created 0.59 expected goals against Forest, 0.49 against Palace, and then they allowed 3.28 expected goals at home to Bournemouth. And it feels like this is a massive game for both sides. Neither side can keep a clean sheet. You can see here Wolves have got 1 clean sheet all season, and Ipswich are no better either. We also have 3 wins between these two sides in 30 games, but struggling to get victories on the board. We're not going to do that without keeping clean sheets. João Gomez is banned, which is a big miss for Wolves. Jose Sarr and Sarabia are also doubts, and Mosquera's also out. On the Ipswich side of things, there's not really any fresh injury concerns that we know about yet on Thursday. Tuanzebe, Ogbene and Hurst remain out. I think this is a really difficult game to call, and the Bet Scout would agree with that. The recommended bets are under 11.5 corners, under 22.5 shots, but over 7.5 shots on target. So whilst the shot volume may be lower, these sides do give up plenty of chances to get those shots on target. For me, it's a very tough game to predict, like I just said. Wolves have only played 2 sides in the bottom 6 at home. They've won 1-2-0 and drawn the other 2-2. Small sample, but they have performed pretty well against these sides in the bottom 6 of the table. Ipswich, on the other hand, they've drawn 2 and lost 2 home and away against fellow sides in the bottom 6. And I think both sides will be okay with the draw here. So I'm going to go with a 1-1 correct score draw. Next up, we have our first live TV Premier League game of the weekend, the first of 5, as Forest host Aston Villa. Forest come into this game off a 3-2 victory away at Man United, which means they've now won 5 of the last 8 Premier League games. Villa were impressive midweek with a 3-2 win away at Leipzig, which means they've now won 3 on the bounce, because scoring 7 goals. This sets up to be a really intriguing fixture. It's Aston Villa's away form that is a bit of a concern for me, especially at the back. They're yet to keep a clean sheet in 7 away games, and they're averaging 2.00 goals conceded per game. They've seen over 2.5 land in 6 out of 7 road games, and that ties in nicely with Forest's recent form, where they've seen over 2.5 land in 5 out of 6, and they've conceded 2 or more in 4 out of 5. On the injury front, Alex Moreno is unavailable to face his parent club, so Aina will likely fill in the left back. But the big injury news in this match is Ollie Watkins limping off in Tuesday night's Champions League win over Leipzig. Onana, Ramsey, both out. Leon Bailey's also a doubt. We saw Matty Cash fill in further forward during the midweek win at Leipzig, and given they won, he's likely to fill in again. So that could be an angle for your bet builders or player bets, looking at him to have 1+, 2+ shots or shots on target, or him to score if you fancy a massive price. Moving on to the Bet Scout recommended bets. It also likes over 2.5 goals and a lot of shots in this game, 24+. So an open game of plenty of shots is to be expected based off recent form. I was also surprised to see this card line so high. It's 5.5 and under is hit in all 5 of Villa's previous games and 4 out of 5 for Forest. And if you also look at the referee appointments, Samuel Barrett, he's on the whistle and has averaged 4.17 cards per game over the past 2 Premier League seasons. So that line at 5.5 looks a bit high to me. Moving on to my predictions, John Duran will likely make his second start the Premier League season up top for Villa as he gets his chance to shine instead of playing his usual substitute heroics. And I'm actually going to go for a bit of an upset win here for the home side. We're getting to the point in the season where the fixtures really pile up and teams that play in Europe suffer more as the season goes on. Apart from match day 1, Villa are yet to win after a Champions League game. They were dreadful in that 0-0 draw at Manchester United. They drew against Bournemouth 1-1 at home, lost to Liverpool at 2-0 away from home, which is no mean feat and probably to be expected. But they were beaten comfortably 3-0 away at Chelsea last weekend. And Forest do have wins over Manchester United and Liverpool this season, so are capable of mixing it with the bigger teams. And I'm going to go for a 2-1 home win for Forest. Moving on to Sunday's action, and we kick things off with the M23 derby between Brighton and Crystal Palace at the Amex. Brighton come into this game having thrown away a 2-goal lead away at Leicester, which means they've now won just twice in the last 6 games. One of their wins, though, was at home to Man City in a 2-1 victory. They have been pretty strong at home at the Amex. They remain unbeaten with 3 wins and 3 draws. You see they've beaten Spurs 3-2, Man City 2-1 and Man United 2-1. Palace come into this match unbeaten in 4, following a 2-2 home draw against Manchester City last time out. 1-0 win away at Ipswich and another good couple of draws against Newcastle and Aston Villa. They do have pretty contrasting form though away from home. Good draws against Chelsea and Villa, but then sloppy losses against Everton, Brentford and Forest. I think goals are the way to go in this game. Palace now have Eze back from injury. They scored in 5 out of 6 and scored 2+ in 3. If we take a look at Brighton's form, they have just 3 clean sheets all season and they haven't kept a clean sheet in 7 games. Brighton have seen both teams score in 7 straight games, and Palace have seen both teams score in 4 out of the last 6. So I think both teams will have success going forward here. On the injury front, Tariq Lamptey has replaced Joel Veltman in recent weeks and offers much more of an attacking threat down the right-hand side. So it's hard to see him coming back straight into the side, even if he is fit. March, Hinshelwood, Milner, Webster are all a doubt. On the Palace side of things, Adam Wharton is nearing a return, but this game I think may come a bit too soon for him. But other than that, Palace is looking pretty good shape injury-wise. Moving over to the Bet Scout tool, and the recommended bets here back up our thoughts around an open game with both teams to score as the top bet. Corners and shots are also fancied. For my prediction though, I think this one will be a high scoring game between 2 sides that are good going forward, but can see plenty of chances and goals at the back. I do think Brighton's quality will see them come out on top though, so I'm going for 3-2 Seagulls victory. Next up we have Super Sunday on Sunday afternoon as Manchester City host Manchester United in the Manchester Derby. Manchester City come in off the back of a 2-0 victory away in Turin against Juventus in the Champions League, which makes it 6 losses in the last 9 with their citizens. However, if you look at those 6 losses, 5 of them have come away from home. Manchester United come in off back-to-back defeats in the Premier League, at home to Forest and away at Arsenal. Their 2 away performances have also been poor under their new manager Amorim. In their 1-1 draw at Ipswich, they allowed 1.59 XG and mustered up just 5 shots in a 2-0 loss away at Arsenal. It's their away form though that's a real concern for me. They have 1 win away from home in all season and have lost 3 out of 6 on their travels. For all of Manchester City's struggles, they have been solid at the Etihad with 5 wins from 7 and held Arsenal to a 2-2 draw. City did also beat Manchester United 3-1 and 3-0 away from home in the league last season. I know they lost the FA Cup, but that game came in a bit of a weird spot for Manchester City. On the injury front, Foden and Kovacic are both in the Champions League squad, so they'll be hopeful of a return here. But Ake is out, and Akanji and Stones are doubts, and Rico Lewis is also suspended following his red card last week. Manchester United play in the Europa League on Thursday night, but as it stands, only have Luke Shaw as a confirmed absentee, and Johnny Evans is also a doubt. Moving on to the Bet Scout recommendations. Goals are on the menu, but we think the corner line looks too high here, and that makes a lot of sense to me. United have switched to 3-4-2-1 under Amorim, and his Sporting side ranks 6th lowest for corners per game in Portugal, an average of just 9.15. They now play two in behind the striker instead of wingers in a 4-3-2-1 like they did under Ten Hag, so more play will be in central areas. So moving on to my prediction, I think given United's poor away performances, even under their new manager, and City still being solid at home in the league, they also have an extra day to prepare on United, who are away in Czech Republic on Thursday. I'm going to go for a City win. I think it's just a case of if United can find the back of the net, really, and if City can keep a clean sheet without Akanji, Stones, Lewis or Ake. Given United created just 0.22 expected goals at Arsenal and 0.8 expected goals at Ipswich, I'm going to say they will keep a clean sheet and end up running out 2-0 winners here. Chelsea versus Brentford is next up and is a strange kickoff time at 7 p.m. on Sunday evening. I'm not too sure how I feel about these games. I feel as a fan watching them, I'm delighted that there's some games on a Sunday evening, but for fans travelling to games and Sunday travel, I think it's a bit difficult for them to be able to get there and back. So a bit of a split decision on that. Chelsea come into this one 1-4 in a row and lost just 2 all season. They're in great form, which came against Man City and Liverpool. Despite keeping 2 clean sheets all season, they sit second in the league and have scored the most goals in the Premier League with 35. And it's actually the away side that sits second most number of goals in the league with 31. The Bees come in here off an impressive 4-2 win over Newcastle. You can see also they've beat Leicester 4-1, Bournemouth 3-1, Ipswich 4-3, but they have been a little bit struggling away from home. They played a very difficult schedule though. You can see Man United, Spurs, Man City, Liverpool, Villa. But this Chelsea side is another real tough test for them. Brentford have conceded 2+ in 6 out of 7 away games and seen 3+ goals in 5. And I've also found the back of the net in 5. And if you look at Chelsea's form, like I said, they kept just 2 clean sheets and have seen both teams scoring 9 out of the last 10 games. So I think this one sets up for another game of goals. On the injury front, Neto's banned, Fofana and Reece James are both injured, and Mudrik's also a doubt. For Brentford, they'll hope to have Janelt and Jensen back, who both missed last game. Moving on to the Bet Scout recommendations, and it's no surprise here to see that both teams scoring over 2.5 goals are looking very solid selections. That's also correlated with 25.5 shots. All 3 of these selections look very strong at 80%. For my prediction, I think there'll obviously be goals at both ends. It's really just a case of how many, and while I do think this one has potential to go a bit crazy at an odd kickoff time, I think I'm going to go with a more pragmatic correct score prediction of 2-1 to the Blues. Sunday night football, can I call it that? Live on TV, it's Southampton against Spurs, which is sets up to be a really interesting game, and it's one I've had quite a bit of difficulty with, to be honest with you. Southampton have lost 4 out of the last 5 games, and the results haven't really changed since moving to a back 5. They're now set up in a 5-4-1, and they lost 6 out of the last 8. They have the second worst defence in the league, conceding 31 goals in 15 games, but have also scored the fewest goals with 11. So they're conceding far too many, not scoring any. So on the Spurs side, they've been just incredibly inconsistent. Since their 4-0 win away at Man City, they drew 1-1 against Fulham, then lost to Bournemouth 1-0 away from home, and lost to Chelsea 4-3, despite going 2-0 up inside 11 minutes. Looking at Spurs away form just highlights how inconsistent they are. They picked up a 3-0 win and a 4-0 win away at Manchester United and Man City, yet losses at Palace and Bournemouth and a draw with Leicester. This is a really difficult game to call. It feels like Spurs sort of almost play up to their opponents and play down to their opponents. They take their level depending on the level of the opponent they're playing against, basically. And there's also some really bad injuries for Spurs again. Looks like they'll be without Romero and Van de Ven. Ben Davies and Vicario also join them, and Basuma and Bentancur are suspended. On the Southampton side, whilst Jack Stevens is suspended, there could be some positive news between the sticks as Aaron Ramsdale returns and Jan Bednarek also back in at centre-half. It's no surprise to see that the Bet Scout here only has 2 recommendations given the inconsistency we see between both sides, but one angle that's been consistent in recent weeks and one that we bet last week was the overs on corners, and this looks good again with Southampton racking up the corners since moving to a back 5. These two actually rank first and second in corners per game, so that one is a very solid selection in my opinion. But moving on to the prediction, and given both sides' defensive records and injuries, it's hard to make a case for either side really winning this. I do think we'll see goals, however, though, and I'm happy to go for a bit of an upset draw here at 2-2. The final game of the week comes on Monday Night Football between Bournemouth and West Ham as the Cherries host the Hammers. The Cherries have won 3 in a row after their late comeback win at Ipswich. They've now seen 3+ goals in 5 out of 6 and have also been very good at home this season. You can see they have wins over Arsenal 2-0, Man City 2-1 and Spurs 1-0. Some really solid performances there. West Ham, we saw them Monday Night Football last week, which is a bit of a drab game first half, but there was plenty of shots. We do get to see them again here. The Hammers won 2-1 in El Sacchio after suffering back-to-back defeats, conceding 8 goals in the process. Both of these sides have seen plenty of goals this season. You can see West Ham 3.2, Bournemouth 2.87. West Ham away from home have played a pretty easy schedule. They've only really played one team in the top 8, and that was Spurs, where they lost 4-1. So this week's Premier League accumulator pays just over 13-1 with Bet365. We're in great form after landing last week's accurate just over 9-1. So let's see if we can make it back-to-back winners. We kick things off on Saturday with both teams scoring Newcastle versus Leicester. The two Army have kept just 3 clean sheets all season and have seen both teams score in 4 out of the last 5 games. Leicester has scored in 14 out of 15 games this season, but have kept just 1 clean sheet. The Foxes have seen both teams score in 13 out of 15 games, which is a league high 87%. We're staying in the both teams score market for the second selection, and the M23 derby is the game of choice between Brighton and Crystal Palace. Brighton have kept just 3 clean sheets all season. The Seagulls have seen both teams score in 7 straight games. Crystal Palace now have Eze back in the side and have seen both teams score in 4 out of the last 6 games. Man City to beat United in the derby is my next selection. For all of Man City's struggles, they've still won 5 out of 7 at the Etihad in the Premier League and held Arsenal to a 2-2 draw. Manchester United coming off back-to-back defeats at home to Forest and away at Arsenal. Their 2 away performances under Ruben Amorim have been poor. In their 1-1 draw at Ipswich, they allowed 1.59 expected goals and mustered up 5 shots at Arsenal in a 2-0 defeat. Both teams scored over 2.5 goals between Chelsea and Brentford in their 4th selection. This is a game featuring the 2 highest scoring teams in the Premier League this season. Chelsea have scored 35 in 15 and Brentford 31. The issue for the Bees, though, is they have the 4th worst defensive record with 28 goals conceded. Chelsea have also kept just 2 clean sheets this season and have seen both teams score in 9 of the previous 10 Premier League matches. We round out the ACCA with over 10.5 corners, or over 10 if you're back in the 3-way market. Basically, we need 11 or more corners to win the bet. Southampton have been racking up the corners since moving to a back 5. These two sides actually rank first and second for corners per game. Southampton average 12.2 and Spurs average 14.2. So that rounds out the fivefold. £10 on that returns £140.64 to Bet365. Let us know your favourite bet this weekend in the comments. Best of luck if you follow, and let's make it back-to-back winners.